Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe here on SABC News Channel. We'll continue with our coverage of the ANC's 55th National Conference. President Cyril Ramaphosa has likened violence perpetrated by men against women to a second pandemic facing the country. He urged men to unite and play a role in bringing an end to gender-based violence.
We have described the violence committed by men against women and children as a pandemic, which is having a devastating effect on our communities and society. We must work together to address the drivers of gender-based violence in our communities, including patriarchal attitudes and practices amongst men. As men, we should demonstrate our intolerance of sexism, of patriarchy, and gender-based violence in how we treat our partners, our colleagues, our mothers, our sisters, and our daughters.
And to look at women representation at the conference, as well as the leadership positions when women are contesting in the ANC, we're joined now by Steve Letsike, Chairperson of Embrace Diversity Movement and ANC-aligned LGBTIQ Movement as part of mass of the democratic movement. She's also an activist in a lot of other spaces as well. A very good evening to you, Stephen. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Perhaps let's just start with the gender lens of some of what has been said, what has happened on the first day of the ANC's 55th National Conference. Is there evidence of this?
Look, thank you so much, and good evening to the viewers of SABC News. I think the ANC has always held a position of a non-sexist organization and striving for the idea of gender equality and women's emancipation. And I think it is why we have the Women's League, that serves as a beacon to really advance and defend the very same gender equality agenda. Look, in the conference, there are clearly tension or issues around how we really ensure a 50-50 commitment that the ANC has taken as a position. And I think we have to realize what are the forces that are necessary to advance the very same fundamental democratic principle of gender equality, and as well as what was described earlier in the year during the National Policy Conference. And I think going into this conference, the idea of renewal, the idea of rebuilding will need to actually take a much needed position around women's emancipation and gender equality. And I think people are feeling it, are seeing it, and it is for the delegates to ensure that representation does have that equality in it, not only just about women's participation, but about youth, but about also LGBTI people for that matter. And I think ANC is able to do so, but it needs to make sure that this conference yield those results.
And just based on the nominations, particularly for top positions, there's been criticism at the, should I say, minuscule, as some have described it, number of women who have been nominated for these positions. Do you share this view?
I share the view because it's not only just about, the National Executive Committee. I mean, I think we've seen the expression also at the level of provinces, at the level of regions, at the level of branches, where women came now as alternatives of whether they are deputizing positions, where we have been very clear, as activists, gender activists within the ANC, has also been about how we ensure that women are in the very strategic position, whether it's chairpersons, whether it's a secretary general, whether it's a treasury general for that matter. So I think the view has been really about how we enhance the ability to changing the situation where what we have fought for of the idea of gender equality is what must be expressed in the discussion, but also influencing the discussion with capacity, capability, and also the adequacy of what really can be brought forward. I think we do have smart women, we do have capable women within the ANC that can really occupy those positions. We have not just made, those reality for many. I think we have that responsibility, and the ANC has that responsibility. And I think many of us as members, we still strive to fight to ensure gender equality for that matter.
We saw the second GBVF summit take place just a few weeks ago, and those who were at the conference, some of them were rather angry to say issues that had been plotted for implementation were still not in the pipeline from the first summit. That not only is progress slow, it looks like there's a lack of commitment. Does the government talk big talk when it comes to resolving issues of gender-based violence and femicide and not walk the walk?
Look, I think there's been great progress, over the last couple of years, and we must acknowledge that when we speak about gender-based violence, which anyway the president have declared as an epidemic in our country, we are speaking about a crisis. We are speaking about where behaviors of men in society have undermined and have actually resulted in victimizing and perpetuating violence against women, against children, and LGBTI people. But what we have seen is some of the steps that have been shaped in the policy level, but also additional steps that have shaped in programs. I think, our ANC-led government have actually even opened up, following what has been demanded by civil society, the call to action, the total shutdown that have brought 24 demands, have resulted in, a second generation of the National Strategic Plan to address gender-based violence. And also it has resulted with government and parliament enacting gender-based violence bills that were signed that actually puts a harsh justice element to protect the victim or the survivor for that matter. And I think even in this conference, the president, I think the clip that you have played earlier when the president was giving the organizational report, it is quite clear the passion, the most important element and commitment of the ANC, but also of the government in this case of prioritizing gender-based violence. And I think even when you read the policy document of the ANC following the conference that took place earlier in the year, leading to the current conference taking place, there are recommendations that this conference must take forward, whether you're talking about how the accused, the very same justice system must protect victims and not the accused, or maybe the charged or the finally convicted person for that matter, where there shouldn't be bail. There must be considered some of the elements around chemical castration. There are quite a number of elements, and the improvement of the NDA or the forensic lab results. So there are quite a number of things that have been shaped. I think where government needs to be putting more effort, we want to see resources that must go dedicated to working in partnership with civil society. We encourage our government, we encourage the ANC-led government to look into working in partnership, because those collaborative effort is bridging the gap that actually have left the capacity or gaps that have actually not been felt by the people. The ANC has taken the interest of the people at heart, and I think we need to then work together in really addressing the social behavior challenges, but also in addressing some of the element around how we address toxic masculinity and so forth. People in society must change. It is not going to be government. It is also not going to be ANC, but it is also going to be our people in the communities that must stop this level of violence and discrimination and attack on women, children, and LGBTI people.
Steve Letsike, Chairperson of Embrace Diversity Movement, thank you so much for speaking to us.